All right. I think I have my camera close enough to my face because I was a little smaller than you for a little bit there, which I probably am a little smaller than you in real life, Matthew Fairburn from The Athletic.
After the last couple years, I would say you probably are.
I don't know though. It's been a very productive summer in terms of dessert season and tequila season. I'm back on the coconut tequila and pineapple juice, getting my sugar fix right before bed. It's a good plan. Good plan. But at any rate, I'd like to welcome in the live viewers. My watch is talking to me. I apologize. Let me shut that up. Thanks for hopping in, everyone. Sabres fall 5-3 tonight to the Columbus Blue Jackets in their second to last preseason game. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen with 28 saves on the night. Your goal scorers were Zemgus Girgensons, like the goal there, by the way, Matthew. Owen Power with a little fluky backhand, glove side. Love to see it. Should have been stopped. And Zach Benson, once again, scoring and getting his 5th point, Matthew, and his 5th preseason appearance. So we have a point per game 18-year-old here in the preseason. But yeah, UPL stopping 28 of 32. Hard to fault them on some of those goals there. I think we'll talk a little bit about that. Sabres outshot tonight 33-26. They were outchanced 29-17. Shot attempts tonight, Matthew, I think also a storyline that we can get into a little bit. But before we get into some more numbers, Sabres moved to 3-3 on the preseason. And did you have a chance to listen to Don Granato's comments after the game? Didn't sound like the happiest coach here this deep into the preseason.
No, he was not thrilled, but keeping it all in perspective, right? It's still the preseason, and I think the way he put it was that it won't be hard to have a meeting tomorrow about this game and extract some things from it that they need to improve from. And that, I think, is an understatement, right? It was a bit of a lopsided game, even though the score stayed relatively close. The ice was tilted for too many stretches of this game. And there was a few guys playing, Connor Clifton playing his first preseason game looked like it at times. There was a few moments where the timing just wasn't right, or, he wasn't great on, he was a step slow or wasn't great on the puck. I don't sweat that too much for a guy that's played in the league a long time. Something to monitor, sure, but he's playing his first preseason game. Columbus has been rolling this lineup a bit. They've had a lot of veterans in even last week when they were in Buffalo. So, but still, you'd like to see the big boys look a little bit sharper, and now only one more preseason game to get it rolling before the regular season starts.
Yeah, I thought it was an inconsistent effort from the Sabres throughout the game. I think they had spurts where they played well, but you can't get into an early hole and then just keep digging your way out for, the balance of the game, whether, the final 50 minutes. And I think that's what we saw the Sabres attempt tonight. Connor Clifton, yes. It was his first game. Now keep in mind also up front, no Tage, no Skinner, no Cousins. But I mean, it can't matter. You also have players that are, they have to ramp up their games. I thought there were a couple instances where some guys were forwards were soft coming back on plays, some miscommunication. The first 2 goals, when I go through the notes, those goals really can't happen because, to your point, Columbus has been rolling out some pretty good lineups here, and there were so many opportunities for that Gaudreau, Laine, Marchenko, I believe it was. They were creating opportunities. They were buzzing for at least the first 40 minutes. And, they were caving the Sabres in. I mean, even when you go and you look at that second period, now the Sabres, from underlying statistics in that middle period, and I want to mention this to speak to the inconsistency. I think they were caved in for like the first 7-8 minutes, but then they, got it together and actually, dug themselves out of a hole a little bit there to make it respectable at the end of 2. But one more game left. I don't know if we have an answer on the goaltending, but we might have an answer on maybe Zach Benson. What are your thoughts with the young kid tonight getting another goal? And, what does that mean for, we already saw Kulik and Roseanne go down, which really Byro and Rusek were kind of those other guys left there, looking to maybe make a last minute push to challenge Benson. What are you thinking about Benson tonight moving forward?
Yeah, it's more confirmation, I think, of what we've seen. This was maybe not his absolute best game of the preseason, but to find a way onto the score sheet again and play, he could have been on the score sheet right before that goal because he comes out of the box and finds Rusek, I think it was, right at the doorstep with a perfect pass. And the pass I thought was as impressive as what he ended up scoring on, which was a nice goal, shows kind of those
Yeah.
offensive instincts in two different ways in a span of like 30 seconds. And
Matthew,
so
he rang a post
right off the bat,
right out of the gate on his
yeah,
first shift also. So it wasn't just, him getting out of the box, but, in between, I think is where, in between that clanging that post and coming out of the box and scoring that goal after setting up Rusek and they couldn't connect. It was kind of, I think that's really where you're thinking maybe it wasn't his best effort of the preseason, even though it wasn't a bad effort by any means.
absolutely. Yeah. And he also, I think what makes Zach Benson the most likely candidate for that spot, you saw him play away from Tage Thompson and Jeff Skinner today, but the fact that he can play up the lineup, some of these other guys, I think, and you saw, Kulik and Roseanne go down, the path for them is a little bit more narrow at this point at how their games are, like where they fit into an NHL lineup. And I think what stands out about Benson throughout the preseason is that he can go up and down the lineup and fit with different guys because of the nature of his game. So that's where I think he's actually valuable to this team right now with Jack Quinn out. If you put him with Tage Thompson and Jeff Skinner, you have a lot more balance in your top three lines. Whereas, Rusek's probably not playing with Tage Thompson and Jeff Skinner, right? Like that's not his role. That's not the way that he plays. And the same is true of Byro. So in that sense, he feels like the best candidate for the opening night roster.
No, he does. And I opened up my podcast this week talking a little bit about Benson and kind of to your point, but maybe from a different angle. I mean, I was looking at him exclusively with Tage and Skinner and saying, wow, the flexibility that Zach Benson gives you by being present here as an 18-year-old and his competitiveness and his smarts, allowing him to play up with Tage and really pointing out, it allows Granato to put Tuck with a middle stat and maybe tinker with who can play with Cousins and Peterka. But to your point, to see him play down, you have so many different combinations now in play potentially. And just to review for the listeners, the line combinations tonight, if they weren't privy to it, I have a little bug in here. It's really pissing me off. Started off with Greenway up top, middle stat at center with Tuck opposite wing, and then Byro between Peterka and Olofsson, Krebs between Benson and Rusek, and Jost between Girgensons and Okposo. We mentioned Connor Clifton. He was paired with Dahlin to start the game, Power with Yoki Haru, and Samuelson with Ryan Johnson. If you go through the first period, I think that bottom line with Jost, Girgensons, and Okposo was excellent in that period, while the other guys kind of figured out, how to get into the game. But that's also not a good sign. I know you can say that whatever line is going is your number one line on any given night, but you don't want it to be Joe Stockposo and Girgensons, given some of the other firepower that they had. Some of the other individual player notes that I had, and we can go through some of the goals at some point, because I think even though Granato in his post-game press conference really wasn't ready to break down some of the plays, I think you and I can certainly do that. Just a couple one-off thoughts on some players. Number one, I texted you this, so you're not going to be surprised. I think Ryan Johnson was good again tonight. Poised, confident. It's just very limited panic, and his agility in tight spaces just consistently gets him out of trouble when he has guys bearing down on him in the corners.
Competitive too, man.
He is competitive, man. Like, did you see a couple of the plays today?
Competitiveness. Like I that's what stood out to me that I wasn't expecting to see, I think, coming into first NHL action like this. And he's hard on the puck, like harder on the puck than I expected him to be at this point in his career. And I think, Don Granato kind of dropped a little bit of a hint the other day about him moving up the depth chart, and then you see all the roster moves and he hangs around. I know you've been banging the drum for a while, but the competitiveness was the word that kept popping into my head, because all the other stuff we've seen, the skating, all these things, but man, it's just like night after night, that guy is competitive. Like he looks like he's fighting for a roster spot. Like he knows he wants, to continue making an impression.
Yeah, he didn't lead the defenseman in total ice time tonight, but I thought it was interesting that he had just shy, according to Natural Stat Trick, 1552 even strength, 5-on-5 time on ice to lead the team. There were some plays tonight, I think, to your point about competitiveness, where, we always talk about him being smooth and smart. He can skate very well. He's really aiding this whole transitional mindset of the defenseman playing fast and getting that transition game going. But there are times when he's closing in on that puck with a lot of authority, really bearing down on puck carriers, attacking it, taking away their space. I think that's what we saw some of it tonight. I think part of that competitiveness also is just a function of some NHL bloodlines, where he's always been around, the game at a high level. His father was an NHL player. You're taught to play hard. You're taught to prepare like a professional at a young age. We saw with Sam Reinhart when he was young. We saw with a lot of these players, they kind of just stand out in terms of their veteran presence, even though he's in his first NHL training camp. That was noteworthy for me, though. I thought Johnson just continues to prove that he can play and maybe provide some more flexibility down the road. Peterka, I don't think his underlying numbers look fantastic on Natural Stat Trick. I don't know if you were able to go through any of those, but overall, I think he's still playing like a man on a mission, playing fast. Everything's crisp, especially in that third period, that first shift that he had on the power play there to start the third. Looked like he wasn't pressing. He was really playing with a sense of urgency, trying to score. He just seems so much more confident this year. Have you noticed that in his game? He's been really sneaky impressive, I think, throughout all of preseason.
That's what I was going to say. It's, thinking back to 12 months ago, it's so much different, because he was a name last year that, he was penciled into the roster pretty much no matter what happened in the preseason.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like he banged down the door to get that roster spot. It felt like, I remember the way Don Granato described things, and it made a lot of sense to me, was that, Peterka and Jack Quinn had earned it with the body of work, right? They weren't going to take a couple week snapshot of training camp in the preseason and rush to judgment, knowing that these guys had earned it with what they did in Rochester. And I think this year he knows where his spot is. He knows his role. He had that great showing at the World Championships. And yeah, the confidence, like he knows he belongs, and he knows where he needed to improve from a year ago. All these things. He's playing, he wasn't playing with Cousins tonight because Cousins was a late scratch, but in practice, when you see him with Cousins, there's that familiarity there, that the crispness that you talk about, it shows up with him a lot, because now he's got that comfortability with Cousins. So he's definitely a sneaky candidate to take a jump forward offensively. And, it's a bit of a side conversation, but how they structure this lineup will be really interesting, because the way they had it earlier in the week at practice, Cousins was between Peterka and Olofsson, and that could work. I know people are down on Victor Olofsson, but it is tough to make combinations, right? You put Middlestat with Greenway and Tuck, Benson up top with Tage and Skinner, and then you have, I think you'd say it's the third line, I guess, but if Cousins is in the middle, you're feeling pretty good about that. And he and Peterka are a nice tandem, and maybe that's a way to elevate Victor Olofsson's game. But yes, I've been happy with the body of work Peterka's put together from start to finish. I think he's consistently been looking a lot more like an NHL veteran than he did a year ago.
Yeah, I think he's bringing himself up to the level that we saw Dylan Cousins finish at last year. I think those two together are going to be nasty this year. The World Championship, the confidence, he's just got this mojo about him this year. And he does look bigger, by the way, looks thicker, looks faster. But yeah, it's kind of interesting, I guess, because to your point, they have to figure out who plays. And again, it goes back to that flexibility. We haven't seen Zach Benson on that line yet, by the way, which is another possibility, right? If you move Tuck back up. Olofsson, another guy that his numbers, I should bring him up tonight, in terms of, he was one of the guys that I thought eye test, he was battling more. He had moments where when the Sabres, because again, they were inconsistent with their effort all night. But when they were trying to make things happen, Olofsson was a guy that I noticed was involved, getting pucks deep and just battling anyways. He just gets physically out muscled off pucks still a lot. But, and I get why, Sabres fans are down on him, but I'll tell you what, I think I see where Olofsson fits in the lineup more than I do Greenway, how they're using Greenway. I'm still having a hard time. And I mentioned this, I came on after, I guess it was Thursday game last week. Was it Thursday? You and I did one Wednesday, Thursday. I can't remember. The days are all mixing up, but I came on and I was talking about how, I thought Greenway played a little bit better later in that game late last week, but I still have a hard time kind of figuring out where he fits. Because tonight now they had him with Middlestat and Tuck. He had some moments where, again, he was just, when he plays simple, he does a good job. I'm still having a hard time figuring out where he fits on the roster. And you and I haven't talked about this, so I'll just kind of throw it out to you. What are you seeing from Jordan Greenway right now? And where do you think he truly lands when the dust settles? And again, it's hard to predict, right? Because we don't even know what the top line's necessarily going to be.
Yeah, that's what's funny about the Sabres right now is that Don Granato hasn't, or, maybe he has shown his cards a little bit in practice. It's kind of hard to know how close to settling on combos he is, but there's obviously a strong internal belief in Jordan Greenway, and they're committed to him in the sense that he's got a decent cap number, and, that's not something you can move around, very much. So so as they had it set up with Middlestat, Tuck, and Jordan Greenway, that's such an interesting line to me because I think Alex Tuck is, a play driver and one of their best offensive players. He has a chance to be like a top end offensive player for them and showed it, with Tage Thompson and Jeff Skinner last year. But a lot of times he was driving the bus, like with the forecheck and,
yes,
his shot. His forecheck and his shot are both elite traits of his. And so, can you drive your line from the wing with Casey Middlestat, who was great when he was playing with Tuck and Skinner last year, not as great early in the year when he didn't have the talented line mates around him. And then, how does Jordan Greenway fit into that? I'd be curious to see that line early in the season because I think it's best for, it's best for Greenway, probably, best case scenario for Greenway. And they have quite a bit invested in Greenway, and Don Granato seems pretty excited about him. And then it's a great chance to see if Casey Middlestat can keep up what he did last year, because that's a big thing that they need to know. As he's in the final year of his contract, what does the next contract look like? If he ends up on a line, say there was, thought that maybe it would end up being, Casey Middlestat, Victor Olofsson, and Jordan Greenway. And then I think you fall into a situation that you had early last season when you're saying, are those guys, talented enough to bring out the best parts of Casey Middlestat, highlight the best parts of Casey Middlestat? And if you're a top end player, you could argue maybe you don't need that. But I think we saw last year, you put Casey Middlestat with the right types of players, and he's got elite playmaking skills. So it makes the most sense to try to extract the most from him. And doing that as it's set up right now, I think is probably their best bet, because otherwise you're thinking about Olofsson up there or breaking up Cousins and Peterka. And I don't feel great about breaking up Cousins and Peterka the way they've played together. So it is funny how the Jack Quinn injury really created this weird domino effect with the lines. And then Zach Benson playing well has thrown another wrinkle into it.
I get the design of Middlestat between Tuck and Greenway, two heavy wingers, big bodies. You have one play driver. I think that Greenway while you need him to make some good defensive plays and, use his reach and his length, his greatest asset is his length. He has to be more physical, I think, for that line to really work. He has to be a beast on the forecheck, and I want to see that more consistent. So I get the design. I'm still trying to figure out, is it really going to work? Tuck has to be really good again, I think, for that line to work. I like Middlestat as a centerman compared to, toying with an idea, putting it back out at wing. I like him down the middle. I like him having the puck on his stick more often. So I guess we'll see where that goes. I just wanted to kind of float that out to you because it's still something that in my head, I'm still going back and forth on, and I'm waiting for Greenway to have this moment, this game from start to finish where he's just the guy that he's supposed to be.
They played him a bunch too in the preseason, which
Mhm.
I think is noteworthy because Don Granato early in camp, when I asked about Jordan Greenway, mentioned being a bigger guy, it takes longer to ramp yourself up into game shape. And so I think that's why they put him on the ice so often in these preseason games, is to try to accelerate that process for him as best they could. And so now I think players like that, and I thought the same thing about Connor Clifton, because obviously different size and all that, but these guys that are supposed to thrive on their competitiveness and their physicality, I can imagine it's a little bit hard to reach that gear in a preseason game on a Wednesday night in Columbus when you got on a plane at 2:00 in the afternoon. You just don't have all your same. So that's where, especially with Clifton being in his first game and with Greenway being the type of player that he is, it's or supposed to, based on, who he has been at his best, thrive on these competitive environments and being this guy that can stick up for his teammates and be physical. The preseason isn't the best environment for that, but still, it's a question. I think it's a fair question heading into the season, what they're going to get from him.
So I guess we got to talk a little bit about UPL.
Again, here we are again. A week
here
later,
we are
same
again.
Goalie. We didn't get any.
We didn't get any
mix up
answers
in the lineup.
I didn't hate any of the goals tonight. I'm not gonna. I mean, I'm going to sound like the apologist again because our first comment that we had here in the stream tonight from Used Napkin, love that name. It says, "Oof, Luke," and actually, Luke. Oof, Luke. First goal. Power forces Gaudreau behind the net, forces him to one side, gets the puck out to Patrick Laine, who got inside. I think that was between Clifton and Byro, all alone. Do you want him to stop it? Of course. Is it fair to, but I mean, where was the defensive coverage there? So I'm not going to hold that against him. The second one where the tuck penalty just expired, point shot comes in, UPL makes the first save. And then again, you have Bemstrom right there inside of two guys, gets 2-3 whacks at the puck before anyone even breathes on him. And that's another one that I'm not really going to hang on Luukkonen. Again, do you want him to stop? Of course. You want him to stop everything. But where's the D, right? The third goal, that was the Gaudreau at the edge of the blue paint, where that's one where, so Clifton goes out to make a play on the boards. Dahlin goes down lower to make a play on the puck. Marchenko hits Gaudreau right at the edge of the blue paint for an easy tap in. Forwards, that's where I think it was Middlestat and Tuck kind of pulled up a little bit. I mean, were they going to chug all the way back and get up there? Maybe I'm asking for too much on the back check there, but again, just not really any tight defensive coverage there in front of them. And then the other one, do you think that went off Krebs's, the Fantilli goal? Did it? Because Krebs gave his stick to Samuelsson. Samuelsson lost his stick on that play. By the way, that was one of the negative plays of the night. Krebs and because they got hemmed in. The Sabres got hemmed in on that play. Krebs fed the puck to Benson on the boards. Benson couldn't get it out. Columbus sustained pressure. Johnson had a whack at the puck to try to clear it to the boards. Didn't go anywhere. Samuelsson sitting there without a stick. Krebs gives his stick, I believe, to Samuelsson.
Much too short.
And much too short. But I think that, so when Fantilli shoots the puck from center point, it looked like it went off Krebs' glove. Do you think that was deflected? Because the puck just went down.
I think it was deflected, and I think it was a really tough. We talked about tracking the puck, right? And that one was a really tough one to track with a lot of traffic in front. But the thought did cross my mind, is that going to be kind of the book on UPL is get traffic, throw stuff at the net, because, you know, until he proves that he can consistently track the puck really well and read plays really well, that may be something that, you know, that teams look at, you know, assuming he's in the Sabres net, which I think is a fair question at this point. But no, I did not think that he necessarily played a poor game. I mean, when you look at natural stat trick, I think 3 of the goals, where it looks like 3 of the goals were on high danger chances. And so, of course, you want some saves in high danger spots, but he made 8 high danger saves as well. There were 11 high danger chances against. And, you know, so one of the goals was medium danger. I'm guessing that was the point shot.
The Fantilli one. That's the only one that I think he really, if you're going to really harp on one, it's probably that one.
That one was the one for me, because the other ones you could point to some soft defensive coverage, and your goalie's got to bail you out sometimes. But, you know, that Goudreau goal was like a tic-tac passing play that shouldn't have been. It was, you know, the puck kept finding their stick, and I think Clifton probably, you know, you'd like to see him make that initial play and, you know, break things up before it ever gets started. But it's what makes it hard to, you know, Don Granato said after the game, they know, it kind of speaks to the point I made about Peterka last year making the team off of his body of work. Not to say that Luukkonen's body of work means he's guaranteed a spot, but Don Granato made the point, like, we know these guys, right? You don't need everything to go perfectly in a Wednesday preseason game to properly evaluate Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. You know Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen really well. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen? I don't know. That I think that's the question that they have to answer pretty soon.
Yeah, and I'm not going to put you on the spot. I'm just going to make a statement. I'm not sure that he played himself out of an NHL job.
I don't
in
think
the preseason.
So. I don't think so.
So
he wasn't as bad. Look, it's as a former goalie myself, I'm always going to have a little bit of a, you know, that part of my brain where I'm able to see where the goalie's coming from. And I think I can already tell will be a challenging part of the dialogue surrounding the Sabres this year is whether it's Comrie or UPL, they're not getting the same benefit of the doubt from the fan base that Devin Levi is getting. It's not to say that Devin Levi he does deserve some benefit of the doubt, and he deserves leeway. He's a rookie going into an unprecedented situation in some ways, skipping the AHL right out of college. Like, not a lot of guys have done what Devin Levi is doing. So I would like people to exercise some patience and some understanding with Devin Levi. The same does not get afforded to Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, and he's 24 years old. He's played less than 50 games, and he's a former second round. Yeah, well, he's a second round pick. He's not a former second round pick. He will always be a second round pick. But, you know, he's got the pedigree, and he's still relatively young. My point would be, that's not a guy that you can simply waive. Like, if you're not carrying 3 goalies, and you've made the decision that Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is not on your roster, I think you have to try to trade him, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, you know, Brian Cummings, who I see is in the chat, he had asked last week about, you know, Tampa. And the more that I think about it, I think they're just going to have other options that might fit more in the salary structure for what they're looking for. And I was trying to bring up, I mean, you might know this off the top of your head. Luukkonen's cap number is probably user friendly.
875, I think.
That's
875,000. It's under a million.
Yeah, 925. No, 830.
8 something, right?
837 and a half. That fits. You know, so I mean, in that instance, to answer your question, do you try to trade him as opposed to giving him away for free? Yeah. Yes.
He has value, is my point. Like, he is a young goalie in a league that Does he have insane trade value? No, but I think he has something. But
I think he might have value to a Tampa, actually, if you think about it, if they really like their defensive core and their team structure in front of the goaltender, because it certainly makes the goaltender's job a hell of a lot easier when you have some competent defensemen.
that'd be kind of scary, wouldn't it? Trading him in the division to the team that's kind of.
I don't. Well, I guess my point is, I don't know if they're there yet.
I don't think.
I just don't know if they're
know
there
if they
yet.
are. They haven't had. It doesn't seem to me like they've, put him in all the best spots. But at the same time, I'm kind of with you where it just feels early to be giving up on him.
The only problem, it's not even really a problem. Sometimes he plays himself, he overplays, he takes himself out of the crease, and then it forces him to scramble. We saw that a couple times tonight. First period, probably one too many shuffles to the right, took himself out of the net, and it didn't bite him in the ass there. There were a couple other times where, it's almost like they want to put like an invisible fence around, maybe a foot outside of the blue paint. Mike Bales can like zap him, or you know what I mean? Or put the collar on him so he doesn't go too far. Cause there's a couple times where he's not as composed and he overplays sometimes. And that could hurt him, but I just want to see him scramble less. I just remember him in his draft year. He was scrambling so much. You could see that he had a really good foundation to be a quality goaltending prospect, but he was always just kind of too scrambly. I want to see him limit that. And he's worked his way out of it quite a bit, but I noticed it again tonight. A couple of my notes in the game was just like, too many times I think he was dragging himself out of the play, and that could at times create opportunities for good teams when they jump on pucks quickly around the net. We talked a little bit about the goals against. We should just go through quickly the goals for, and I know I don't want to keep you here all night, but the first goal, beautiful. Ryan Johnson, again, I'm gonna get my plug in. Crossover dancing at the top of the zone, going left to right, finding Gergensons for that beautiful, beautiful bar down shot. Samuelson picked up a secondary helper on that one. Columbus got a goal to go up 3-1, and then that was the Owen Power goal next, really. And that was all to me about the Sabres playing simple hockey. They got the puck in deep. Tuck was on the forecheck. Middlestat was working. Power's the one guy, though, that came down the left boards and plugged the zone, disrupted the whole play, got the puck bouncing around, scooped it up, and made the backhand finish there to make it a 3-2 deficit. And then, of course, Benson. So the Benson play. My note was saying Benson, offensive zone, hooking penalty, kills a PP. Can't do that. Can't do that. Then he gets out of the box, makes that nice pass to Rusek. Rusek, I don't know if it rolls off his blade or whatever. Then Benson gets it back. Benson, by the way, gets the puck in the middle of the ice. He's going backwards, and he fires a shot far post. That's a nice goal, man. Nice goal. Did you see the look on Lucas Rusek's face?
Yes.
Because Rusek was out there with him. He's like, fuck. Because that's the guy he's competing with.
Right. He's sitting there. Well, and yeah, he makes those types of plays.
He misses the goal.
Right.
And then sees
these guys that are competing for the final two spot. That's what I was thinking about was, man, Benson makes this perfect pass. And like you said, I don't know exactly what happened, but Rusek, you'd like to see him finish that, right? And then, for not 30 seconds later, Benson makes that play. And it's one of the qualities that I think can make Zach Benson an NHL player at 18 years old is that Granato's mentioned this as well, that he doesn't feel pressure in spots that maybe other guys would feel pressure. And that's a situation where you see a lot of young players, a lot of inexperienced players just want to get rid of the puck. And there was enough patience there by him on that shot, just enough to, get the goalie moving and find the open spot. And it's a great shot. And kid's just a hockey player, man. He just keeps finding ways to make plays. And even when it's not, look, I like even better when it's not perfect at 18 in a preseason game. And then you see him work through it, right? Work his way out of it and not get too down on himself, because those are the qualities you're looking for when you say, will this guy be able to hold up mentally to the grind? Physically is another question that might be unavoidable over the course of a season because he is 18 years old. but mental is a big part of it as well, because you are playing a lot of hockey, a lot of travel, you're away from home, you're living on your own, all these different things. So it's easy to get down on yourself, and he just doesn't. He just keeps playing. He just keeps going and going and going, and that's a quality that I really like to see in him.
And we're not going to get those answers in preseason. You're going to get those answers in the regular season when he gets games. And I think it's pretty clear he's going to get games. And because it's all NHL lineups, the intensity just gets ratcheted up. And I think if there's cracks in the foundation of who he is as an 18-year-old player, they'll start to show then, maybe. But, once he gets through the adrenaline, because again, I think, we talked about the last time, when is the buzz going to wear off? Like the buzz hasn't really worn off yet. Like the buzz is going, fairly well. But, maybe that resets a little bit on opening night. But, that third, fourth game that he plays, maybe not. We'll see then. But it's been definitely a great storyline to have this preseason amongst a few, goaltending, defense. Ryan Johnson's been a storyline for me, and of course Zach Benson. So again, for those that don't want to read the ticker or didn't watch the game, Sabres fall 5-3 tonight in Columbus. UPL stops 28 of 32. Your goal scorers, Zemgus Girgensons, Owen Power, and Zach Benson, who we just mentioned. But the story for me really was, getting the shot attempts really were 53 to 32 at 5-on-5. That to me was kind of the story of the game. Sabres dug themselves an early hole, couldn't get out of it. To your point though, Matthew, again, just put a bow on Benson. The timeliness of his goals been pretty solid. The winner last game against Columbus tonight, even though they didn't win, that was a big goal to pull it back to 3-3. So an inconsistent effort here. Sabres going to close it out Friday against Pittsburgh. And then what is it, a week off until the regular season?
Just about. Thursday night, the 12th, will be the opener at home against the New York Rangers.
Any other final thoughts from you tonight, Matthew Fairburn, on tonight's game, or just anything, maybe what you're looking for going into that last game of the preseason?
They still have to sort through some tricky roster decisions. I think Benson is the easiest of them, right? Like you said, I think he gets games. I think you got to figure out from there, that's 13 forwards. Are you keeping 3 goalies? If so, that means you're keeping 7 defensemen. And that probably means, Bryson gets waived. And then from there, you're also probably having to waiving Cale Clegg. And then that makes the most sense to me right now. That 13-7 with Stillman being the extra on defense, Jost being the extra at forward to start, and then 3 goalies. That's probably what makes sense to me the most. But we can jump in and get to a few of these questions too if you want. We've got some late arriving questions here. I like it.
Yeah, we'll have to get through these. I would hate to disagree with what you just said, but I don't. So that's a good segue into getting some of these questions. Let's go right up through the top here. We'll cruise through these. Yeah, I have time. If you have time, I'm
Sure.
I am golfing tomorrow at 8:27 a.m. and I'm all good, man.
It's a good golf day. Some good golf weather on the dock.
Dude, do you know that I only golfed once in September and twice in August?
It's unlike you.
Pathetic. So I'm going to start making up for it here.
It's better than me still. It's better than me. So
yeah, I don't want to talk about that. But yeah, I'm still a little pissy about this. Teddy says, when Johnson makes the Sabres lineup, do you see him on the right side or the left side, and who would be his ideal D partner? That's a good one. Because I think coming into this camp, at least from my perspective, I thought that they wanted to try to make him, ironically, a little uncomfortable and maybe see if he could fill the need on the right side. But it sounds like Granato, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you're down there a lot more than I am, and you're around the scrums. It sounds like he's really liking to keep the left shots on the left side, the right shots on the right side. Is that something that you're seeing?
So far, that's been, he talks a lot about being able to mix them up, and we know that he can do that. But what we've seen in practice has been a lot of the lefties. It's been pretty much the same since the start of camp with Dahlin, Clifton, Power, Jokiharju, and then Samuelson and Eric Johnson. So a lot of lefty-righty action, but that's what they have right now. What do they
And
have when Ryan Johnson gets here? I don't know.
well, that's it. That's what I was going to say, Teddy, to answer the second part of your question. I think really who is, well, you said his ideal D partner. I was going to say like his partner is hard to say, right? Because we don't know who's going to get hurt when he gets called up. Ideal D partner to me though, that's a good one. I like the Johnson Samuelson feel of that potential partnership. If you have a thought on that, Matthew, I'll kind of move on to the next one.
Yeah, I thought the same thing about tonight. He and Samuelson looked pretty comfortable together.
Yeah,
And
I liked it.
there's a nice contrast there, I feel like, in styles. And uh, Ryan Johnson does look like both those guys can play, kind of either side. And so that's, I think, to their benefit.
Brian Cummings says, I didn't like the rebound on the Benson goal. That puck should have stuck to him. You always want good rebound control. I didn't think that was an egregious rebound. It was just unfortunate that he was there and had, time to make a sandwich and try to keep whacking at the puck. But yeah, I mean, I didn't think that rebound was that juicy. It fell in front of him, it is what it is. Jason Bourne says UPL isn't a guy you can simply waive, but has had one solid season in North America at the pro level. Has he had one solid season in North America at the pro level? Last year was a tough year. NHL Rookie of the Month in January. It's not a solid season, a solid month.
Right. He had that solid stretch.
Yeah.
December.
Yeah.
He made that trip out west, and they played great out there in Colorado and Vegas and Phoenix. And he had a great stretch there from mid-December through about mid-January. And then the team kind of hit the skids for a while, and he didn't play well. And he didn't get the net back at the end of the year because of it, I think.
Jason, good qualification on your question, though. You say, has he had one solid season in North America at the pro level? Because the initial reflex, obviously, is that he was one of the best players in junior hockey, his first year of North American hockey when he played in Sudbury. But no, it's been an inconsistent battle for him since he turned pro. I don't think there's any question about that. James Miller, who stays and who goes? Keeping Benson, Stillman, and Byro. UPL gets waived. Again, I'm not fully committed there to the UPL piece just yet. Maybe you explore trade market potentially, or if you believe in him, you keep him and you see if you can still iron out some of those puck tracking inconsistencies and some of the things that Matthew and I had talked about previously. Who stays and who goes? More to come. I think we already just kind of covered that, unless you have additional thoughts on that, Matthew.
That's about how I see it right now as I laid it out. I don't, look, will you lose Brandon Byro on waivers? Maybe. But unless you can find a last second, trade for Victor Olofsson, but I don't love that idea the way I would have before Jack Quinn's injury. I like having Olofsson's goal scoring in the lineup. So then it's a matter of, Byro, do you keep Byro so you can send Benson back to junior? I just don't think you can send him back right now. I really don't. And so, yeah, I've got it at 13, 7, and 3 right now because I'm still clinging to UPL as a viable goalie for them this season.
And we didn't see Stillman tonight, but I thought Stillman's been pretty good.
I've liked Stillman. Yeah,
I like his element. I like he's played within himself.
He's what you want as an extra, a guy that can bring a physical edge, a guy that can, fill in when needed, and what he's going to bring. And he's got, he got thrown in here late last year, gets in the fight, which was, I think that was his first game. Did he get in the fight?
Tanner Jeannot caved his face in.
His face in and was playing for the rest of the season with like this, shiner and bloodshot eye and the whole thing. Like, and, he's jumping into a new system and playing, in a much more up-tempo way. So he seems more comfortable now. And I just like him as a seventh guy. Like, did I love him as the fifth or sixth guy? Not nearly as much as I like him as the seventh guy. So, and who else has been good? And I think it's why, like, waiving Bryson seems like a no-brainer to me because not only has Ryan Johnson been really good, but Cale Clagg's been pretty good too.
Yeah. Yeah, he's been flying out there. I mean, for the team that wants to play fast, he's been skating very well. the pace of play is noticeable when Clagg's been on the ice. Can Savoy, James says, can Savoy go immediately to Rochester for a conditioning assignment when the season starts? Yeah, when he's ready and he's healthy, the way that I see it is because, again, they're going to try to stretch this out as long as possible. They're going to get him plenty of practices. And I wouldn't be surprised if his first at the NHL level practice with the Sabres, get him some skates in. And I think his first game action of the season would probably be in the AHL. He can make a conditioning assignment his first appearance, basically. He can do that. Brian says, not a perfect analogy to Benson, but I was thinking Wyatt Johnston in Dallas. Yeah, in terms of coming in, Johnson was great last year playing with, he played most of the season on a line with Jamie Benn, which helped him. He was insulated by a veteran leader. Yeah, a little bit different players, though, different stylistically in terms of, different positions also. But no, I see where you're going with that, Brian. If Bryson and UPL make the opening night roster, the Sabres deserve to miss the playoffs. Well, Jason, I mean, it's not nice.
That's not the attitude anybody needs to start a season.
It's October 4th. It's October 4th, Jason. Charlie, not a fan of Greenway. Ask why he's leading forwards a nice time in these games, because I think Matthew kind of covered that also. Let's get his game legs under him as a bigger guy, get the conditioning up, get him moving, and see what they can do with him here going into the season, have him in peak form, peak condition. Wasn't UPL an AHL All-Star Player of the Month twice? Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't read too much into AHL All-Stars, but he may have been. I think he went to the All-Star game, potentially. I mean, when you go back and look, by the way, like Linus Ullmark was not a standout AHL performer when he was in Rochester. He had some good moments, but again, I don't read too much in the AHL because the ice gets so tilted down there sometimes. UPL was hung out to dry so many times when they played the Amerks. That was a factor in some of his poor numbers down there. Oh, let's see. Teddy is just kind of commenting on how UPL was insane at the OHL level. Absolutely. I think that's it for questions. Let's see. Charlie's not a fan of Greenway. And Teddy says, does Grigorenko being rushed to the NHL scare you at all with Benson? What's the key difference here? Skating, competitiveness. That's the key difference. Grigorenko's skating was the biggest concern to him, not succeeding right away. He was physically mature. When Grigorenko was allegedly 18, you could have cut his leg open and count the rings. It might have been 23 or 24 rings also at that time. But no, I think it's skating and competitiveness. That's the biggest differentiator between those two. And not all 18-year-old players are created equally. Benson definitely, we talked about on draft night, the competitiveness, the motor. He's thriving because of that and his smarts. 3-zone smarts, you notice it with Benson. We mentioned that last time, Matthew, when we were together. He's noticeable all over the ice. Not perfect, noticeable, and that's not a bad thing.
And not all, like you said, not all 18-year-olds are created equal. Not every prospect is going to take the same road. And I see very little harm based on what he's shown. And we've qualified it plenty of times. It's the preseason, it's this, it's that. But He looks better than a lot of other players that are older than him in the preseason. And he looks a lot better than people his age in the preseason. So I see no harm in getting him the games. And I also don't know that you're overly worried about it's got to be just the 9 games, right? Like if it's a little bit more than that, I don't think that's a big deal.
Burn the year. Who cares? If you're winning, it's who helps you win. We talked about this last week when we were together. Does he help you win? Right now, the answer is yes. They didn't win tonight, but I think he can help you win. Hey, last thing, because again, we'll cut it short after this. Kulik goes down. Okay. Did he get a fair shake in preseason? Would you like to see him maybe get a look up top with some of the skill players? He played mostly on the line with Roseanne and Byro, maybe was it? I can't remember who the hell he played with last game, but would you like to have seen him get a look up top at all, or did it not matter to you?
That's a fair point. I think or a fair question. I don't know where you stand on that, but a fair question for sure. I think based on what they all showed early, Benson earned it. And so once Benson earned it, nobody was wrestling that away from him. And then it was a matter of you can't play certain veterans before they're ready physically. In Alex Tuck's case, he was ramping up and didn't get on the ice. Maybe would have gotten some more time with Kulik, or maybe you could have gotten Middlestat with him a little bit more. Look, it's not always fair, right? There's only so much ice time and only so much to go around. And I think when Benson grabbed hold of it and didn't let go, that he earned it. And that's where it would have been interesting to see Kulik with some more guys, but I also know he got heavy run on the power play early. Wasn't able to cash in on a few chances in that Washington game, I think it was. So
Yep.
he had some opportunities, and I'm interested to see how he handles it, because I know he came in really focused on that NHL roster spot, and after the year he had in the AHL, I think it's natural for anybody that age to have that season and think, "Yep, next step, I'm going up, and now there's a spot for me." And this is another, a reminder that everything is earned at the NHL level, and they're not handing out spots. And I think as long as he processes it the right way, which I think is a challenge when you have guys that are, would have been more of a challenge had he not played in the AHL last year, didn't already have the coaching with Seth Appert and some acclimation to North America, the language, all of those things. I don't have as much fear of things being lost in translation with him and, him taking it the wrong way. And he's got to be ready to go, because if certain players go down, and this is what I was talking about with Benson at the top, is I think the path with Kulik as his game is built right now was a little bit more narrow than Benson's, because he's a very similar player in a sense to like a Victor Olofsson, and they have Victor Olofsson, right? And
Yeah.
so the role for Kulik was not as easily defined as with Benson. As soon as he was on the ice, you're like, oh, this guy could play on a few different lines. Kulik, not quite, but to your point, maybe if we saw a little bit more of it, because he got a lot of ice with Roseanne, and then, that would be great for the Amerks, that they got that early time together, but not so great for Kulik or even Roseanne individually to see what they could do with some of those veterans. But I just think Benson earned what he's getting right now a little bit more than those guys did.
I agree with you again. Damn it. No, I do agree with you. I think there's one thing that was working against Kulik also was that it seems like they really want him to play center. And maybe that was also a factor that kind of limited him. I mean, could they have thrown him out on a wing? Of course they could have. But no, I mean, if he's going to be a centerman, and that's where they see him, or at least want to develop his defensive zone play and those off the puck responsibilities, they're really going to make it happen or accelerate that development by putting him down the middle. But no, I don't think that it was a bad thing at all to send him down. I think that I agree with you. I think that kind of what we talked about, the differentiation between Benson and a guy like Grigorenko years ago, the smarts, the competitiveness, that's what allows Benson to play up and prevent. And once he got to that point, wasn't letting that go of that opportunity. So no, I agree with where you're at on that. I just wanted to kind of pose that question because I don't think we're going to be talking about that next time we get together. I think that's it, Matthew. So in summary, JJ Peterka is a beast this year. He's not going to be sitting down for a couple games like he was last year. Benson looks like he's here for at least an extended visit. He won't be seeing his billets in the state of Washington anytime soon.
He might need.
You don't have clarity. Yeah, he might need some here. He could stay
He's
here.
still pretty young. He needs
kick the dogs out.
I'm curious if you got a lot of these young guys living on their own for the first time as pros, like Devin Levi and potentially Benson here. It's going to be like, I don't know. I always find that stuff interesting. Sometimes you get that veteran that wants to take a guy under his wing. Maybe Gergensons wants a roommate. I don't know. Eric Johnson maybe would be a candidate. I don't think anybody wants to live with Kyle Okposo and his 4 kids, but maybe that would be that would be a great story. That'd be a crowded house, but
it reminds me of Eichel playing checkers with Matt Molson's kid or whatever. It was like, Like Eichel's just doing this for the camera. He's like, I can't wait to get out of here.
Yeah.
But all right. Well, Matthew, thanks for popping in tonight. We almost went an hour, man.
We were due.
I said I wasn't going to keep you long, but I lied. Of course, that's what I do. I'm a liar. And we'll do this again really soon. Thanks for all the questions, everyone. Thanks for the comments. And I'm going to go let the dogs out to pee and hit the bed. So I'll talk to you guys next time. Matthew, thanks again for hopping on.
Thanks for having me.